Welcome back to Wargaming World, to France 1940, and to another game of Wargaming World Solo. Now, just before I talk you through what this game is going to be about, just want to say some thank yous. Thanks to the guys at Border Reivers who have organised the Border Reiver event at Gateshead International Stadium at start of September. Absolutely fantastic day. Had an opportunity to play demo games there. I played a Norman-Saxon battle there, and it was really good. And thanks very much for everybody who came across and picked up a copy of Wargaming World Solo. It was really good to see you, to have a chat about how the game works. So thanks very much for that. And so I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to play a game here and start right at the beginning, including the marker phase, and also to play a game where it's very broad. So my table's 8 foot by 3. I wanted to show how we could use a lot of figures in a slightly different format, so I'll talk that through very briefly. We talk about the focal point. The aim of the game is to take this particular road. I'll talk through about the 3 German markers in a moment, but this is the road that we've got, and it's held at this end by the British and French forces, so let's have a quick look at those. So we've got an attacking British and French combined force. So we've got 10 units, so what does that actually look like? And so you'll see the markers with the dice. Now, number 1 is an entire platoon, and then further on you've got a mortar team as 2, 3 is a Vickers team, and then over on the other side we've got 4 is another platoon. So we've got 3 sections, but it's only 1 unit, and number 5 is this Matilda 2. On this side we've got, so marked by 6 and 7, we've got the armoured car, the Panhard, and we've also got a Hotchkiss tank. Looks rather small, but that's the French tank there, and we also have an anti-tank gun which is 8. So the French platoon, including the unit there in terms of its VB unit, is just going to be 1 platoon, so marked as 9. So all of that infantry will operate as a single platoon. And over on the other side here we've got our final unit, which is 10, and that is the mortar team. So in the first phase of the game, in the first turn effectively, we have all the well, let's say Allied unit advancing, the French and British, and they're moving towards the objective. So the aim is to take this road, and at the other end we have 3 markers. So let's take a look at what the markers mean. So we're looking at the chapter 12, which is movement for the marker phase and deployment. Let's see how that actually works in practice. So you'll see that there's the motorcyclist there on the objective. Well, it's to our left as we're looking across. There is another marker, and again onto the other side there is a 3rd marker. So it's a defensive force. So defending, it means that the 2 units here, or the 2 markers here, they will move forward. We'll roll 2d6 to see how far forward they move. And then on the left hand side we've then got what will be a measured movement. We'll move a 3d6 further forward. The other 2, these two cautious ones, can't move further than the measured unit, and at some point they will come into line of sight of the French and British, and then we'll work out which one of the 3 markers is indicating the actual position of the Germans. This measured unit here, so how many inches further forward are we talking? 13 inches. Now, so the marker is here. Naturally it's going to be in line of sight of the advancing British, so we'll test it in a moment to see whether that is where the Germans are deployed, around this centre marker. 2d6. 4 inches. That is indicating is that if it is this particular marker, then it's very much towards the back of the table. So the last one, we've got this marker over here, and 9 inches. There's the livestock, so the marker is there just behind the church. So let's see what the output of that is. Essentially, if we roll a 1 or a 2, then the German forces are in this centre, and we'll set that up. If we get a 3, 4, 5, 6, obviously they aren't there, and instead we'll have to test whether the unit is in this position here. Now, I think realistically that it is in the line of sight of the French over here, so we would test, and again just be a 1, 2 or 3 this time because we've only got 2 markers. If it isn't there, then we know that the German forces are going to be over here. Now, even though the German forces aren't necessarily in line of sight, we know that it's in that area, so that's how we would set up. 1, 2, is it in the centre? Yes, it is. And so the defending Germans have been identified in this area, and lo and behold, they have a very defensive position. There's sandbags and all sorts to put them into a strong defensive position in this area, as they're holding this area with also 2 units of reserve. So we've only got 6 units out there, effectively 2 platoons. There's a heavy machine gun on the left hand side, anti-tank gun, and then on the right hand side there is an anti-tank rifle, and at the back corner there's a mortar team. So we've got 6 units, and as they've been detected in their phase, in actual fact we can test for the morale and see if they want to fire. So we've got 6 units, and what I'm going to do for the whole game is I'm going to say that the German units have a morale standard of 9 and the British and French of 8, and the only time that will change is if any of the leaders are lost in the units. So let's start off to see if the morale standard works and if the German units will fire. And just remember, using chapter 14, that a unit will not, with the VY, not just fire because it's the right thing to do. We'll need to draw a card. It's likely that it'll fire, so it's more or less anything other than a joker, but a joker can be drawn. So let's see if we A, pass the morale standard, B, whether they will be able to fire, and then we'll see if we hit that machine gun team, and then we will test right across the units to see that all 6 of them will remain cautious in terms of their morale standard. The machine gun, that's fine. Anti-tank gun, 9 or less, and an 8's fine. Now the first platoon, again a 9, fine. Anti-tank rifle at the side there. And now that's a 10, so that means it's not cautious, it changes its behaviour. So 1, 2, 3, it'll go bold. 6, no, it goes measured. So mark temporarily with a blue dice. So let's test the other 2. So we've got the second platoon and a mortar team. Platoon, that's fine. Mortar team, that's fine too. We'll see if there's a random event before anything else. No, there isn't. Fire on both the British and the French with the 5 units. Just need to draw a card and see, just to make sure that they don't draw a joker, that they can fire. Start with the machine gun, that's fine, and then we'll go on to the anti-tank. Pack gun is fine. So let's have a look at the platoon. That's okay. So then we've got the second platoon firing at the French and the mortar. So the second platoon first of all, okay. And finally we've got the mortar team. That's fine too. So effectively we've got all 5 units being able to fire. Let's see if they hit. Machine gun team is firing at this British platoon here. It's 25 inches, so it's extreme range. It's 9 or less to hit, and then half effect. It's certainly a hit. The impact. It is 2 less 1. Which would be take us down to 1. Conscious that is also a heavy machine gun, so that's a +1 for a heavy weapon. So the effect is going to be 2 in total. Each unit is morale is 8 less 6. Sorry, less 2 means we need 6 or less, but it's not. It's a 9, so therefore it is 3 above, which means effectively it makes a slight. I was going to say withdrawal, but it needs to slightly reform, so it'll move back slightly, but we just need to test and see whether there is a leader killed in that action. We want anything but a joker, really. And it is, it's fine. Move this unit back, and it means they can't operate in the next turn. The anti-tank, not surprisingly, is going to fire at the Matilda 2. But that's a miss. This time the platoon are going to fire again at the British advancing here. If it's a hit, it's extreme range, so it's half the effect. So is it a hit? Yes, it is. D6. 3 halved, so effectively it is a 1. Roll is 8, less 1 is 7, so do we get 7 or less? Yes we do. British are fine, and therefore we don't need to test to see if there is any leaders killed. Now over in the French sector, I think that this can be a target, the anti-tank gun. So again, it's extreme range, but it's 9 or less. That's a hit. Effect. It's going to be nothing, although it's in the shade by the tree, and we've got a mortar team that's going to fire at the same target, firing over here. It's a hit. I'm going to give this a bit of soft cover, I think, so it's a -1 in terms of impact. Extreme range, no effect. So in turn 1, the British and French have been advancing. We've identified using the markers that the Germans are actually defending here towards the centre of the table. They've got a lot of cover with sandbags, etc., and are all dug in. We've got 6 units, so they must have some reserves also to come onto the table. They've harassed the advancing British platoon here, who have moved back slightly. But no major disasters for the advancing and attacking force. So this time we turn to turn 2 and see what the British and French will make of what's taking place. So turn 2 and see how many actions I will have. Oh dear, right, 1. Plus you get 1 because it's an attack, and also I can issue 1 from the main command, but that's 3 in total. If there is a random event, no there's not. Okay, so with the first order, I've moved my French platoon forward, so it's the whole platoon, so that is 1 move. I can't move the British unit forward because they had to move back in the last phase. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fire with the Matilda 2 at the anti-tank. So firing to hit the 10 is a miss. Finally I'm going to fire with the mortar, but I'm going to fire at smoke. 8 to hit. That's a hit, so the smoke lands here, cutting off that anti-tank. Over to the Germans, so I need to roll for the morale standard of each of those 6 units. I've rolled for all 6 off camera, and as it happens, the ones with the red dice remain cautious, but the anti-tank is it's measured, so therefore it is permanently measured, or it's moved to measured from cautious, and it can operate in the next phase as measured. If there is a random event, there's not. I also need to test whether any reserves appear. So draw a card. It's a 5, so nothing appears in this turn. I'm going to fire with all 5 units that can. Just need to draw a card and effectively do anything other than draw a joker, which would mean they look for cover. Start with the heavy machine gun. It's a joker, it's fine. Now I can't fire with the anti-tank gun. So the next question is what it will do sensibly. I would say is probably manoeuvre to see that it can fire at a different target. It'll be possible with anything other than a joker. That's fine too. Platoon would be able to fire. King's fine. We've got the second platoon, and we've got the mortar. So we're 6 for the platoon is fine, and a 2 is also fine for the mortar. So this MG42 is firing again at the British units. Gets a +1 in doing so. It is extreme range, so it's half effect, but essentially it's anything other than 11 or 12 will be a hit. That's fine. It's a hit. Attacked +1 and then halved. 3, I'm going to say that that's effectively at an extreme range, which is going to be an impact of 1. 8, last one is 7, and they pass, so they don't need to test and see if they lose any men. Sorry, any leaders. I've moved the anti-tank, but then we've got the first platoon firing again at the same target. so should be anything other than a 10 that's going to be hit. Should have said anything less than 10, not anything other. Impact halved, so we're going to say that that is a 2. The morale is 6. Fine, the pass with 5. The platoon over here is going to fire at the advancing French infantry in soft cover. The French infantry, and that's a hit. Cover and extreme range. It's still going to be 2 though. Is 8 less 2 is 6. 7 is a fail, so they're going to have to move back slightly. We need to test and see if leaders are hit. No, just fire with a mortar at the same target just before I do anything else. That is a hit. I'll actually say it's a +1 in terms of the impact for high explosive. Extreme range, so we do get a +1, so it'll be 6. Halved is 3. 8 less 3 is 5. So that's also going to be in order for it to retire. A leader hit in the process. Yes it is, a leader is wounded. So we've had to bring the French back, and also we have one of the leaders wounded, so that is going to have a negative impact on morale for future tests. At the end of turn 2, and you should already get a sense of the challenges that the British and French are facing to try and advance. However, in the last turn I got a very poor roll in terms of the amount of actions I could make. What's going to happen in turn 3? Okay, how many commands this time? Better. So I've got 4, also on the attack, so that's 5, and I can get a further issue from the command. So the command of the British, I'll just show you where that is. Overall command point of the whole operation is here, so as long as these units are within 6 inches over here, then they can get that additional command, and it will be, because those mortars on the left hand side will be firing. If there is a random event, there's not. So in terms of movement, I've moved the Matilda forward, I've moved the platoon forward. That's a second of 6 actions. I've then moved a second platoon forward, so that's 3 in total, and then I will have firing. I couldn't move the French forward because they had to retire in the previous phase, but I can fire both the Panhard and with this Hotchkiss, and another smoke round from the British mortars. Start with the smoke, and that's a hit. This time smoke in front of the heavy machine gun. You might wonder what happens to get rid of the smoke. Well, we might have random events and weather, so we'll see how that goes. We've got two vehicles, I should say, firing at extreme range at the platoon there. To hit first of all is a miss. That is a hit. Yeah, Hotchkiss, in fact, it's 24 inches, so it's standard range, close range, so it's going to be 1d6 plus 1 minus 1 for soft cover. So effectively it's just a 1. More or less than the platoon is fine. Oh, it's not, but it's a 12. So 4 above means that it will retire like a half move away from its cover. So it's going to move about 3 inches behind, which means it doesn't fire in the next phase. We also need to have a check and see if there is a leader involved. We've got here Queen, no, that's fine. So the platoon, as I should say, has moved back away from its cover. So now on this side, the heavy machine gun and the anti-tank, well, they had smoke originally, have moved the anti-tank, but also this platoon's moved back. So as far as the advancing British is concerned in particular, there's an opportunity here. Okay, so I'm going to test for the morale standard of each of these units, as well as whether potentially there is any reserves coming in. Tested all the units, so all can operate, other than the platoon, obviously, that have just moved back. They can't move in this phase. The others can fire, including the anti-tank if it wants to fire in some form. Let's just see if there are any reserves coming in. What we need to be looking out for is a picture card. Unfortunately, not on this phase. It starts over here. There's no point staying where they are, so I'm going to move that heavy machine gun into an area where it can fire in future phases, but what I've got to be able to do is to see whether it would actually do so. So effectively then, anything but a joker, and a 3 is fine. That's where I'm going to reposition 2. Just to mention, I did roll for a random event, and 1 isn't, I didn't roll a 6, so it's not going to happen. Over here, I can fire with the anti-tank, and I'm going to fire with all the others, so no other movement. I will just fire with this. Fire at the advancing infantry that I can. Yeah, that's fine. And is a +1. British are now in standard range, and it's a 9. It is a hit. +1. That's 3. Less 3 is 5. That is 8, so the British will make a half move back. That's where they get to, and there's a gap between that and the Matilda. Now, I can't fire with the platoon, but I can with the anti-tank rifle, and that's going to have a go at that Matilda sitting there on its own. Card. I can do 9 to hit. It isn't a heavy weapon firing, but it's against the heavy target, so there's going to be a -1 in its impact if it hits, which it does. And -1, that's just 1. How does it react? Makes no difference, just bounces off. Over here we'll have the infantry firing at the French infantry again, and the mortar. Can the platoon fire? Anything but a joker? Yes, that's fine. Let's see about the mortar also. Yep, that's okay. Platoon at extreme range. There's a hit. Soft cover. No effect. Hits. Half. Right, okay, so 6 + 1 with the mortar would be 7. It's extreme range, so it's half. It's going to be a 3. The morale is also down because the leader has been wounded. So let's see the impact of that. So we had our morale less 3, so 8 is over. So it's chapter 5, and remember we got a king. So the leader was wounded. These are regular troops, which is an 8, which means that for 3 turns the unit's morale standard is dropped by 1. So it was 8 down to 7, and we have just the impact of that for a 7 is a 4, and we rolled an 8, so it's 4 over. So again they retreat half a move. Now I'm going to say that for this platoon, if we move half again, we're right on the board edge. So if this unit, this platoon gets hit again and needs to retire in the next turn, I'm going to say it is removed from the game. Okay, so how many commands do I get in this turn? 3. Again, +1 for firing with the mortar via the command will take us to 4, and I'll also get 1 for attack. So I've got 5 in total. You'll remember this unit had to retire previously, so they can't advance in this phase, and certainly not the French. Now, as the French have been wavering, being hit by units over here, I think it's entirely logical I try and take out these units in my phase. So if I'm going to keep my French units in the game, I'm going to use other units. So some French mortars, and this 25mm gun, fire with the Matilda, and a bit more smoke. And my only movement will be from this platoon. Is there a random event? No, there isn't. I'm going to try and drop some smoke over here. 8. Ah, but that's a miss. I'm going to put smoke elsewhere. I'm just going to say that is a miss. The Matilda was fired at by the anti-tank rifle. I'm going to say it fires back at the same unit because it was hit. So let's see if it hits it, and it's a miss. French 25mm is going to fire at this second platoon here. That's a hit. Heavy weapon and the soft cover knock each other out, so I'm going to say it's 1d6 of impact, but it is a 6. A 9 less 6 is a 3. There's an impact there. Ah, right, so it is 9, so it's 6 above, so that is a full retreat back. Is a leader hit? No, there isn't. So that is a full retreat, so I can't do anything in this coming phase, and that's helpful for the French. That just leaves that mortar firing, sort of counter battery fire at the other mortar just on the end there. Is that a hit? Yes, it is. String range, and it's soft cover, so the heavy weapon and soft cover knock each other out, so it's half of what this will be, so it's 2. It is 9 down to 7. What happens? But that's an 11, and that unit is going to retire. And as it is at the back of the board, I'm going to remove it. So as I turn to the VY phase, it's this is where we are in this turn. The French are on very much on the line, but we've managed to remove a German unit. The British again had sort of advanced and then came back. A tank advanced, and then we also have this platoon here on the left hand side, the far left, which is advancing. So let's see what happens in terms of the VY phase. Just test the morale standard. So the machine gun, it's a 9. But it fails. 2, 3, it goes bold. Yes, it does. Temporarily it's lost its cool and can't operate for this particular phase. Again, it's a 9. That's fine. 2, which will really want to move back into its protected position behind the sandbags, etc. 9 or less. That's okay. Anti-tank unit, the one with blue. Again, that can fire. It's no problem. Treated unit at the back there. Its morale is 9. And that's okay. Is there a random event? No, there isn't. Reserves appear for the Germans. No, they don't. We're down to 5 units on here. The machine gun can't fire, you can see, because it's gone bold. The unit which has the platoon will want to move back into its position. I'll do that in a second. The anti-tank will fire, as will the anti-tank rifle. And I can't move the unit that retreated at the back there. I can just turn it round. Movement first. Anything other than a joker and that the units can move back into position. It's a king, that's fine. So they're back into position. I'll just turn the figures round at the back there. I'll just draw a card, make sure it doesn't get a joker, although I'm not sure what I'll do if they do. They don't. So they're turned round. So instead, we've got the pack gun over here, firing at the British infantry, and then we'll have this anti-tank rifle firing again at the Matilda 2. Card for the pack gun, 4, that's fine. Same for the rifle, and that's fine too. And fires at the British and hits. Some of those figures are within 24 inches, so I'm going to say it's a full hit, +1 for a heavy gun, so that's a 4. Morale down to 4. What have we got? Oh, 3. They're absolutely fine. Tank rifle's firing at the Matilda and hits it. It's a 1 dice, -1, because it's a heavy target with the tank, and it's no effect, just bounces off. Right, the end of the turn, and I think a lot has changed. If I get a very high roll, I'll certainly be moving the French forward, and over here on the left hand side I can move both the British platoons, because neither has taken casualties in the last phase, as well as supported by potentially more smoke and the Matilda. So I think in some ways it is advantage to the British and French over to the next turn. A phase that I think could be decisive. So let's see how many actions I've got. Oh, crikey. 6 +1 for the command and 1 for the action. So 8 in total. Need to test if there's a random event. No, there isn't. I didn't get a 6. Lots of movement. Both British platoons have advanced. Here on the left hand side as well. And so I've moved the French back right from the back line up to this position. So that's 3 actions. I've still got 5 to go. I'm going to use the mortar to fire more smoke towards this machine gun. 8 or less. That's a hit. And that's more smoke. And Matilda, I'm going to get this to fire at the platoon there. 8 to hit. I'm going to say it's machine gun fire, so they're going to get a -1 for soft cover. Is it a hit first of all? Yes, it is. Impact -1. What have we got there? It is a 2, so it's just 1. So 8 or less for the platoon to be fine. Oh, but it's a 9. Right, so that means it's going to make a withdrawal like it did beforehand, just half distance. Check if there is a leader killed in the process. It's a wound. So the leader is wounded, and you go down for the next 3 turns. So I'm going to fire with a panhard. It's actually 24 inches away, so it's not extreme range. See if we can hit the unit as it's moving away from its cover. I'll say the unit's still obscured, so it still gets the soft cover. Does it hit? It is a hit. So I'm going to say it is 1d6. It wouldn't be 1d6 +1, but it's soft cover, so it's just the impact here, which is 3. Now check. So the and morale standard drops by 2 from 9 to 7 for 3 turns, so we're at 7, then we lost 3, so it's 4. Do we get 4 or less, or how far above? Ooh, crikey, so it's 5 above, so that is going to be a full retreat right to the back of the board. This is where the unit's gone to, and it's retreated all the way back here, so this game is looking very poor in terms of the Germans. Now, what I am going to do is fire with this VB team. I know we did movement elsewhere in the platoon, but I'm going to allow this to fire, and firing at the German unit which had retreated back over here. I'm going to say this is half effect if we hit, but it's a miss. Finally, I'm going to fire with these mortars again, same target at extreme range, and that is also a miss. That's a terrible phase for the Germans in particular, because it's their inability to fire subsequently. I've only really got the anti-tank rifle and anti-tank gun, so it's pretty dreadful, but let's see if we can get some kind of reserves in for the Germans. Okay, so I've tested the units. All of them stay as they were, with the exception of the machine gun team. That has gone back to cautious, so that can't operate in this phase. Neither can the one that retreated. The unit at the back, which had previously retreated, it can now operate in this phase. And then we've got 2 that can fire. Well, let's have a look and see A, if there's a random event, and B, whether there is any reserves. Is there a random event? No, there isn't. So with reserves, we're looking for a picture card and not a joker. It's a 4, there's no reserves. Now, I can't move either of those units, the machine gun or the one that retreated, because its approach changed for the machine gun team, and obviously this one retreated, but we can turn round, so I'll just do that in a moment. But I'll move this unit back into its defensive position here, just as long as I don't draw a joker. And I don't, so that's fine. That unit is back in position. I've turned the other unit around, and that leaves us with 2 units who want to fire. So let's start over here with that unit firing at the Matilda. Again, just as long as it's not a joker, and it's not. And then I may as well work out the anti-tank, which is going to fire at the British infantry as it advances again, and that's fine. First of all, anti-tank rifle at the Matilda is a hit. What's the damage? No damage, because it's a hard target as a tank, so that's nothing. Pack gun firing at the British infantry, hits it. 1d6 plus 1 impact. We get, oh, that's a 6 plus 1 is 7. British morale is 8, less 7 is a 1, so it's definitely going over. Wow! And at 11, that's a 10, and that is a full rout. So fired by the pack gun, the game changes in an instant, and this British platoon disappears. Well, everything was going so well, and then disaster. Now a huge gap has appeared between the French and the British, so what can happen in the next turn? How many commands? That's helpful, so 6 plus 1 for the commander and 1 because we are attacking, so it is 8 in total for a random event. Oh, yes there is. Now, that's significant. Now, when you have a look in the rule set, there are lots of different things I've put as an example for a random event, but effective for this game is the fact that the weather changes. As a result, we're going to lose all of that smoke. And that can be advantageous to both sides, in the sense that this now exposes some of the German troops on this side, so certainly this platoon might fire. So I'll have a look and see what I'm going to do in terms of movement and of firing. For movement, I've made a general advance with the French here. So we've got the platoon. You can see there's a figure still down because that commander is still down, I think, for another turn. I've also advanced further up here with the Panhard and with the Hotchkiss. So that's 3 activities. I'm going to fire the 25mm. On the other side, I'm going to fire with all 4 units. So I'm going to fire with the platoon, the Matilda 2, I'm going to fire for the first time with the Vickers machine gun, and then again I'm going to fire with the mortar. Start here, 25mm, firing at the platoon behind that hedge. Not a hit weapon, but soft cover, so they cancel out each other, so we're just saying that it is just a single dice, which is a 4. The distance, it's within 24 inches, so it is a 4. So that unit is 9 on its morale, less 4 is 5. The consequence of that, 8, the unit will need to move back just away by 3 inches. The leader hits during that. No, it's not. Here, this platoon is going to fire at the nearest target, which is the machine gun team. 8's to hit. That's a hit. 6 impact, which is a 4. 9 less 4 is 5. And that is fine. Now with the Matilda, I'm going to fire at what's danger to it. So I'm going to fire at that anti-tank pack gun. It's a hit. It's a shell is behind cover, so it's just a D6 impact. But it is a 6 though. Down to 3. Oh, that's well above. So that is 7 above, which is a full retreat. It's tricky to mark that. So I've turned it round, and the crew are right at the back there. There's a leader hit in that process, which would impact morale. No, it's not. That's a queen. Fire with the Vickers at the machine gun team over there. It's going to be at an extreme range. It's to hit. It is a hit. It's +1 for a heavy weapon, but it is, I'm going to say, actually, I'm going to say they're in soft cover as well. So I'm going to just say it is half of what this dice will be for an impact. It's a 1, so it's no effect. Fire the mortar at the same target. I could fire at the figures right at the back there, but that would just be gamey, just to try and knock them out of the game. So let's see if the mortar can hit. Yes, it does. Range, which is half of what this dice will be, because I'm saying although it's a heavy weapon, again they're in soft cover. 3, so I'm going to say it's just 1 of 9 down to 8, 7. That's fine. So there's an advance taking place, and it's helpful that there's not a great deal of firing that the Germans can do to fire back to impact that. So let's see what happens in their turn. Another test off camera, and all I would say is that the crew from the pack gun, they've changed in their approach. They've gone a bit bold, but essentially that just means that they've moved away from the gun, and perhaps their behaviour is a little well, impacted, shall we say. The rest are the same, and so we can have firing from the anti-tank rifle and certainly from the machine gun, but what I would want to do is to move that platoon further forward. I can't do anything with the one that's retreated back there, but let's see also whether there is a random event, and importantly whether we get any reserves. A random event? No, there isn't. What we're looking out for here is a picture card, not a joker. The picture card will potentially bring in reserves, and this one's a king, so let's roll. This is the chapter we're looking at in terms of flank and reserve units that appear. This is the important table. So we've got a defending force. So we roll. If we get a 1, nothing turns up, and 2 and 4, we've got 1, 5 and 6, we've got both units. Okay, so what are we going to get? 4 means that we get 1 of the 2 reserve units. And there we go. So Panzer II is on. It's bold. It's come on at the game, and we're going to see if it can fire straight away. So it will fire at the Panhard, but first of all let's just do some of the movement. Move this unit at the back here, as long as no joker. That's fine. Where they get to, there's a distinction between that and the crew of the pack gun. Machine gun team is going to fire at the British here. They are in soft cover. With the card as always. That's fine. And no less to hit. And it does. Will be +1. The cover the British get is -1, so it's just a single dice. So 4 down to 4. That's the impact. 11. So 7 above that means that that is a full retreat. It's a full turn away from the enemy. So yeah, we'll have to see what we can do over the next couple of turns. But again, that's not awfully helpful. Leader killed in the platoon. No, there isn't. It's a rifle. It's an anti-tank rifle. It's going to fire at the Matilda. But that is a miss. Actually, I'm thinking about that. I think it's been firing at it each time. So I'm going to say that's a hit, because you get a +1 for a hit if you're firing at the same target. So yeah, I'm going to say it's been firing at the same target all the way through, and it's static, so yeah, 10's a hit. So the anti-tank rifle firing at the Matilda, that's a hit. -1 in terms of the impact, which would be, oh right, that's still a 5, so that's significant. What's the consequence of that? So the morale is 8, less 5 down to 3, so again that's going to need to make a half pullback. Withdraws back here. Killed in the Matilda. Wounded. So that means that is going to be an impact in terms of their morale. The morale will go down to 7. Alright, so we've got the Panzer II firing at the Panhard. Sure we don't get a joker, and we don't. 9's to hit, and it does. They cancel each other out in terms of being heavy units, but what's the impact? It's a 6, goes down from 8 to 2. 6, so that means it has to make a half retreat. That's where it finishes. Just check if a leader's killed. No, there isn't. The end of the turn, and I hope you get a sense of how the game, the ebbs and flows of the game, and importantly, it's a solo game, so you know, it still for me shows how uncertain the game is, despite the fact that it's just me playing it as the solo player. But yeah, you don't really have a particular control about what's going to happen. Things like the random events coming in, or the reserves appearing, and therefore the tank makes an impact. So yeah, I think certainly think this is working, and as far as the game is concerned, it's too close to call. So it's a new turn. I feel like the British and French are a little bit on the back foot. Certainly as the German armour is starting to appear. Let's see how many actions I can make. What have we got here? Still decent, so 4 plus attack and the command, so 6 in total. Can't do anything with these other than turn round. Can't do anything with the tank because that's hit and has gone back, as is the case for the Panhard. So more or less everything else is going to operate. A random event. No, there isn't. I've moved the French forward, so it's along this line under a line of cover. So I'll fire with the mortar team, 25mm gun. Start with the Hotchkiss, firing at the tank at the other end. It's an 8 to hit, and it is a hit. 6 damage. It would be +1, but obviously it's a tank, so that kind of knocks it out. So 4. So we've got at 4, morale is 9, down to 5. We get 5 or less. Doesn't look like it. No, it's going to move back a slight. Like I had a half move to the edge, which is what happened effectively with the Panhard. Just make sure that the leader isn't... Now it is a joker, and that means that the leader of that tank is killed in the process. What's happened is that the tank begins to withdraw. The leader in the tank, the commander, is being killed, and so the morale will go down to 7. Mortar team is going to fire at this second platoon. That's a miss though. Same target for the 25mm gun. That's a hit. I'll give them soft cover, so it's going to be just 1d6 for a hit. Impact's just 1. Morale of 9, less 1 would be 8, so they have to make a slight retreat again. Let's test for leaders. No leader casualties. So they push back again right to the line. Fire with the Vickers, and then finally I will fire with the mortar. Vickers will fire at the first platoon. And miss. Mortar at the machine gun team. That's a hit. 1d6. The impact, that's 3. 3 is 6. What do we get? 9. So that is going to again retire. So it's a half move, but it means it goes off there and obviously isn't firing in the next phase. The German phase, I've tested the standards. So the machine gun stays cautious. It's obviously moved back, so can't act in this phase. However, the platoon failed because its morale is down at 7, you know, with this leader down. So it's gone temporarily measured, so it can't operate in this phase. The anti-tank team, they are back at cautious. They can't operate in this phase, but can in the next, back on cautious. The anti-tank rifle can fire, it's fine, and the platoon, again, which can't move because it went back in the previous phase, it stayed cautious, and the tank, it stayed bold, but again, it can't operate in this phase. So the only thing that can actually happen is the anti-tank. Check for reserves. No, no reserves. There are random events. No, there isn't. The whole German units, the only thing that's going to operate is the firing of this anti-tank rifle again at the Matilda. And it hits it again. Damage. It's 3. Is the response. Absolutely fine. New turn, and I feel like the British and French are getting a bit of an upper hand here. Let's see. But maybe not with a 1, so that gives me only 3 actions. Random events. No, there isn't. We're going to fire with these 2 units and move the French infantry because I've got to continue to move. So the French are advancing well here on the right hand side, in which case is going to fire again at the same target, and that's a hit. 6 impact, which is a 4. Remember that the leader had been killed, the commander of the tank, so it's gone down to 7 in terms of morale. It was 4 for the impact, so it really needs a 3 or less, and unfortunately it is a full retreat, so that means that the tank is removed. Now with the Panhard, I'm going to fire at the first platoon. That's a miss. I think I'll see what we can get in terms of moving these units forward, but if they're struggling, I think we might get towards a French and British victory. Alright, so the machine gun team can move back. They're cautious. The first platoon is back up to full strength in terms of its commander, and it's passed as cautious. It can't fire in this turn, but that's back to a morale of 9. The crew unfortunately have not passed their test, and they've gone measured, so therefore we can't use that pack gun. The second platoon were fine and can move as long as we don't get a joker, and the anti-tank rifle is fine as always. Is there a random event? No, there isn't. Reserves. Oh, that's a disaster, because when you draw a joker, I'll show on the rules, but that means that the reserves have been ambushed on the way, and as a consequence the second vehicle is not going to arrive. And this is the rule, so if a joker is drawn, it's been a disaster, and the reserves are lost. So unfortunately that means we're just left with the infantry. I'm going to carry on and play through the turn. First of all, I want to move that machine gun team, so anything but a joker is fine. So they move back into position. I want to move second platoon back into position. What do we get? That's okay. That's where they finish. And finally, I can do some firing with the anti-tank rifle again. Make sure they fire and don't go into cover. That's fine. The Matilda. I'm going to say yes because it keeps firing at it. And you get a +1 when you're firing at the same target. So I'm going to say that's a hit. What is the impact? Right. Okay. So it's a 6. It's a hard target. So it's 5 in terms of its impact. That's 5, and remember the morale had gone down there, so 5, the morale's gone down to 7, and well, we're definitely going to go above 2, so let's see by how far. We're going above by 6, so that is a full retreat. At the end of that turn, it takes the Matilda back very much to the edge. Game's still going, so let's have another turn for the British and French. So 5 plus 1 for the command, and 1 for being an attacking force, so that gives us 7 in total. A random event. No, there isn't. I can move the French and this platoon forward, so I will do. So it'll be 2 movements, certainly, and then possibly 5 other units firing in total. I'll move these French forward as well here on the right hand side. So the British are here, and the French have advanced over here. Dropping a French mortar onto that unit to hit. It's a miss. Hotchkiss at the same target. It's a hit. D6, it's got soft cover even though it's a high explosive, so we've got 3 is a hit damage I should say, and we've got morale of 9 less 3 is 6. Do we go above? Yes, it does, by 3. Leader killed in the process or wounded? No, it's not. Hard firing at the first platoon that it fired at last time. It's a definite hit. Yeah, and it's just so it's a 4 effectively. Well, not effectively, it's a 4. So the morale is 9 down to 5 or less. No, we don't. They retire. And the Vickers is going to fire at the machine gun. It's a miss at the same target. A hit, 6. Just the 1. And the test for now, it's a 9, but it took 1, so it'll need to retire. So its morale goes from 9 to 8. The reason why, when I rolled a 1, it's a high explosive, even though it's soft cover, so it does take a 1. So therefore, it will also need to retire a half move. Right, at this point, I am going to call it. I haven't moved the figures back, but all of the firing units, with the exception of the anti-tank rifle, are unable to fire in the next phase. So they will all have to move back, the 1st and 2nd platoon and the machine gun. The pack gun can't fire because the crew haven't returned, and there are no vehicles for the Germans. The French are advancing here on the right hand side. They've also got 2 vehicles, and although the Matilda isn't doing anything over for the British on the left hand side, they do have that platoon and a Vickers and a mortar. So I think if that's the case, it'll be the Germans will retire while they haven't taken too many casualties, and come back to continue their blitzkrieg another day. But as for this is a victory for the British and the French. Right, well, it just leaves me to say thanks very much for watching. Thanks again to the Border Reavers War Games group, who organised that great War Games display and session at Gateshead International Stadium in early September. Really enjoyed it and really appreciate being able to do the demo game, and indeed everybody coming across and picking up a copy of Wargaming World Solo. I'll see what game I do next, whether we do something perhaps Vikings, I'm not sure, or maybe another period. I'll wait and see. In fact, I'll post onto the Facebook group and see what you think on what you prefer. But as it is, it's been a French and British victory. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.